That was weird. All right, folks, I don't know what the heck happened, but it looked like that the streaming software actually did not start streaming when I told it to. That's really odd. Okay, so we're going to hope that this wasn't a complete waste of time, but if it was, sorry about that. Apparently, I did not log into Google on the back end of OBS Studio, which then caused everything to basically destroy itself, and the entire world fell apart. So we'll keep on trucking for about an hour. For those of you who dialed in late, my apologies. That is 100% user error on my part. On the bright side, I get to talk about all this stuff again, I guess. Let's see. Additional wake-up call institutions. According to the NFT's website, the bill would create a clear chain of custody for each human body or body part, ensure shipments of human remains and body parts are properly labeled and packaged, and ensures the respectful and proper disposition of donated bodies and body parts. That's largely a result of that stuff I talked about earlier with Reuters. While Marsh feels it is important to wait and see how the prosecution pans out before introducing new legislation, Redmond asks for a call to action. Yeah, I mean, I get what Professor Marsh is saying. Like, I get it. Don't rush a law without putting some proper thought into what it is that you want to do. I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. I'm also not dumb, and I realize Florida's got some comprehensive laws on the market that have been on the books for literal decades that are very well vetted, and you can just go ahead and copy and paste and start there. That is something that is very, very important, I think, to recognize. That when you say, you have 15 states that have these laws, look for the ones that have had them the longest. Most importantly, look for the ones that have the most comprehensive. No one can deny Florida has one of the highest death rates in the United States. It's, there's at least 2 cities that I can think of where the unofficial tagline is where people go to die. So you might as well go ahead and look to see what they got on the books, because it's probably going to be pretty damn good. And I have to admit, the Florida laws are pretty comprehensive, and they are very well worded. I can't think of too many revisions to Chapter 497 or Chapter 4, Florida Administrative Code 69K over the years. I mean, they've expanded things, like they've added legislation to it, but they haven't really gone crazy with, this is a really bad way of what. No, they've simply modernized their law as they've went. So I'm thinking that's a good place to start. I think this situation screams out for added investigation by lawmakers and policymakers to think more deeply about the way in which we treat the dead. Well, yeah, but only from the willed body standpoint. Like, we don't need federal legislation regulating state disposition of bodies. States need to do their job. At the end of the day, we are 50 distinct bodies that are collectively under the umbrella of one federal government. And the states need to be on their A game and need to do their job. So here's the fun part. As of today, so Valentine's Day Eve, judge dismisses family's lawsuits against Harvard over morgue scandal. Loved ones who sued Harvard University over the theft and sale of human remains will appeal a judge's decision to toss the suits. Okay, so this is a cold read. Okay, we're back to a cold read. So here's the thing. I am willing to bet that we're going to see language in here that Harvard took all the reasonable steps they could possibly take, and or, this one's more than likely, they were not able to anticipate the harm, so they had no way to protect against it. And if the harm is not foreseeable, negligence does not imply. And if Harvard is not condoning the situation and is aware of what is happening and not taking steps to stop it, there's not much you can do about it. Okay? This is what's going to kill me here is if that is the truth. Okay? If that is the way this actually rolled. This actually goes against the jurisprudence against funeral homes, where a funeral home was sued because a body that was prepared for a visitation, the funeral home was broken into, the body was sexually assaulted, and The judge, because this was a bench trial, they waived their right to jury, I think it was. They were found guilty of negligence, even though they had no foreseeability that this could have happened. And part of the stupidity of this was the employee forgot to lock the chapel door. So the guy, whoever it was, walked right up, opened the door, went right inside, and was able to commit his heinous act. Nothing like that had happened in the community. Nothing like that had ever been published on the national stage, and this is back in the 80s before the internet or anything like that. So the funeral home would have had no way of knowing that this was foreseeable. Now, if someone broke in, opened the door, walked in and stole jewelry or did something like that, that is completely different. It is foreseeable that if you are going to win the Darwin Award for, not locking your doors like a dumbass, then you could probably foreseeably find a person that, or you would find that it is foreseeable for someone to walk in and steal stuff if you fail to lock a door. But fail to lock a door, someone sexually assaults a corpse, maybe in 2024, yeah, but back in the 80s, probably not. So let's see what popped up on this one right here. Families who sue Harvard University after loved ones' remains were stolen and sold in the black market have had their cases dismissed. What I need to put on my soundboard is the dun-dun from Law & Order. Paula Petanovich said she was told her dad, whose body was donated to Harvard Medical School, is one of the victims of the morgue scandal. Saw that in the previous article. For those of you just tuning in, I'm a dumbass. I forgot to hit the go live button. I started streaming, but it did not start going live until I pushed the go live button and logged into Google. And I think that's what caused the problem is, for some reason, my streaming software logged itself out of Google. To know someone bought something of my father's or multiple things of my father's, I want that back. Yeah, you probably do, but not in the sense you want to keep it. You want to, dispose of it with your dad. I get that. Harvard's morgue manager, Cedric Lodge, is accused of selling body parts from donated cadavers. So here, folks, we're only talking about the family suing Harvard. We've already saw that, that guy is in jail and likely going to stay in prison for a little bit. He's facing several criminal charges in the case, as are people who trafficked in those body parts. Again, this happened last June. Trials can take up to 2 years. But when he does end up going in, it's going to be for federal crimes. Because remember, he's taking stuff from Harvard. He's driving to his home in New Hampshire. He's mailing it from New Hampshire to other places. So it's crossing state lines, and now you've committed a federal crime. So you're going to get, the federal penal system accommodations. 1 star would not recommend. Their dental's okay, but really the food sucks. How can Harvard just get away with this? Asked Peltonovich. I just don't understand. Again, Harvard wasn't the one that was doing the thieving. Harvard was unaware. See, this is the issue with laypersons in law. And this is where we get the sense of outrage that we get in society. I don't understand how Harvard can get away with this. Harvard wasn't the one doing it. Our boy Cedric Lodge was doing it. His wife was doing it. Those are the ones that are going to get imprisoned. The question we have to ask about Harvard is, could Harvard had any way to notice that this was going on? Would they have any reason to believe this was going on? Are there anything that they could have done to stop it if they would have suspected it? And if the answer is yes, they would have suspected it and they took no action, Harvard's got to pay out. Like, Harvard's got to do... Harvard basically was just going la 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 and not caring. That's what Harvard would be doing, and that's when you find yourself liable. This is why when something comes up, you have to address it immediately. You can't put it on the back burner. You can't shovel it somewhere and hope no one finds out you scooped the dog poop under the carpet. You have to address it. And then at least, if you are liable, your liability is going to be hopefully limited, because when you found out, you took prompt and decisive action. If the decision to dismiss the civil case against the school, in the decision to dismiss the civil case against the school, the judge said Harvard is immune because it acted in good faith and is not liable for the alleged misconduct of its employee. Now that's interesting. That's interesting. Because, and this is a good point. He is an employee of Harvard. Okay, he is an employee of Harvard, and under the master-servant relationship, Harvard is responsible for the actions of its employees. So in one respect, I kind of get that maybe Harvard should be liable, but the fact is the university acted in good faith. Kenny, big man, how the hell are you? Hey, congratulations on the boards, bro. You did it. Proud of you, man. Kenny writes, I know someone who works there. He does the embalming at a ton of trade places in Massachusetts. Okay. And I can't imagine, man, when that went down, if he was working there and he was involved, he probably got sat down. Like, he legit got sat down and got talked to. It does not surprise me, though, that, judges in Massachusetts were talking about the revered Harvard University. They can probably get away with a little bit more murder than other places could. I'm not going to deny that that's not, in the realm of possibility. I think Type 3 sponsor would be responsible. Yeah, exactly. So Kenny's saying the Type 3 sponsor. Massachusetts has a really unique funeral licensing system with different categories for people, for licensees, in their roles and responsibilities. We don't have something like that in the state of Florida. You're either fully licensed, you're an intern, you're an apprentice, or you're a nobody. Up there they have, licensed person, licensed manager, licensed owner, blah, 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 blah. It's just part of the system where Massachusetts overwhelmingly likes to make things confusing. And I can't talk shit about Massachusetts, folks. I lived there until 1989. So I will absolutely talk trash about Massachusetts law because, oh my God, it's trash. It's what happens when you have a state that's been around since the literal birth of the nation. They just had all that time to make up crazy stuff. Harvard gets basically a get-out-of-jail-free card, said attorney Catherine Bennett of the law firm Morgan & Morgan. Bro, Morgan & Morgan, largest personal injury law firm in the nation. Why does it not surprise me that they're the ones suing Harvard? No responsibility for what happened in its morgue with the remains entrusted to it. And, Attorney Bennett's not wrong. Attorney Bennett is not wrong. I find it really odd that it wasn't settled. Like, I find it really, really odd it wasn't settled. Barnes is one of the attorneys representing the families. She says Harvard turned a blind eye to what was happening in the morgue. There it is. Told you. They're trying to prove that, you had to have known there had to be something there, because without that, the case completely falls apart. Like, I had a person that I knew here in Florida that was a manager of a funeral home, of a prep center. And while that individual was in charge of the prep center, a body was sexually assaulted. And the state moved to discipline that person. And one of the reasons why they moved to do it with the severity against the manager was, you should have noticed the fact that there was a bottle of petroleum jelly, that there was a jar of petroleum jelly where there shouldn't have been one. And the problem is, if you are in our field, you know that petroleum jelly, Vaseline, is a mold retardant. It's also a fairly good mold preventative. So if you are, if you're storing bodies for a long time, or at least a moderate period of time, an application of something like petroleum jelly serves to both lock in moisture so the skin doesn't dehydrate, and it also protects against the formation of mold. So it's a very useful product. So trying to say, hey, the jar was in a place it shouldn't have been, and that you should have been able to know and determine because you're Sherlock effing Holmes that someone was doing something improper. That's a bit of a stretch, man. Like, I'm not gonna buy it. So then it comes down to this sort of a thing, and right, we're not gonna have access to all the information, especially if it never even goes to court. Like, I don't know how this is going to be treated in regards to investigation records, if you're going to have to file a Freedom of Information Act or something when it's all said and done so you can tear it apart. But I'm willing to bet, okay, I'm willing to bet that this is part of the larger issue. It is very hard to track these damn things when they're in the process. Like if you're in the building and it's going from point A to point B, you know that, lab 3 is going to have 4 hands in there so that the students in the med school can practice on the hands. Then when the hands come back for disposition, you check them back in, and then you can just simply say, hey, they went where they had to go, back in the container with the remains, or they went into regulated medical waste. At that point, how do you know that that's not what happened? Right? You can't be watching everyone 100% of the time. I'm a manager of a facility that has 25 employees, 24 excluding myself. I can't be over everyone's desk 100% of the time trying to determine if they're talking only about workplace-related stuff, or if they're in their offices and they're yelling between the offices about, what's happening over the weekend, or if I'm a jackass and I shouldn't be in charge because I'm an incompetent loser. Like, I'm not going to know that. Now, if they're yelling it at 105 decibels, yeah, I'm pretty much going to figure out they're talking trash about me. But, I'm not going to put microphones in there just to see if they're having conversations not related to the workplace. That's just stupid. STOOPID, stupid. So how much would Harvard have to do to say that, hey, we're doing all we can, especially when nothing like that has happened on your premises before. Now that it has, the standard has to change. You are going to have to do something different. You're going to need that report that they were talking about in the last article. Here's the findings. Here are some common sense steps we can take. There needs to be checks and balances. So a good way to do this is kind of like what funeral homes do, or should be doing, and is recommended by both the Cremation Association of North America. It's recommended by the National Funeral Directors Association. It's recommended by the International Cemetery Cremation and Funeral Association. You have people witness what is happening and they sign off as well. So if you are tossing a hand, if you are putting something back in the specimen container where the cadaver it came from, it goes in there, you lock it, the next person sign off that it was closed and locked. And even then, if something were to happen, is that enough until you know it's not enough, right? It's never enough after it happens. But before that, was it sufficient? Now, in funeral service, the way it's explained is what you do is you sign off as the cremationist, the witness signs off, and then you immediately load that body into the retort and you go, 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 go. Shut the door, and process starts. From that respect, it is really hard to screw around with that because you're dealing with 16 to 1800 degrees worth of retort. You're not going to just turn it off, open the door, take something back out. You're going to lose a layer of skin in that process. So this is something far different. To be ruling that gives away every school out there to be a ruling that gives every school out there carte blanche to let criminals run wild in their morgue, and so long as you don't look, you're scot-free, said Bennett. And again, the attorney is doing their job. Okay, the attorney is doing their job, which is to advocate for their client. So look what's happening here. They're painting a picture. They're explaining their case. And mind you, there's a threshold where you go from talking smack to influencing the media, or to basically slandering to influencing media. What they're doing here is what McDonald's did back in Liebeck versus McDonald's. Paint the plaintiff as a person who's a moron, who's just suing McDonald's because of the fact that she burned herself and she should have been smarter than that. Well, this could be the situation here. Because remember, this case is dismissed. Okay? There are no findings of fact because there was no case to find facts in. So maybe discovery happened, but that's just that. That is discovery. That is not brought to court, argued, and findings of fact have been made by a body responsible for findings of fact. That is just discovery. And then the lawyers, based on discovery, are going to form their arguments and their legal opinions as to what is happening to try to convince the finder of fact that their interpretation is correct. So she is stating exactly what she needs to state for her plaintiff, that these folks knew about this or should have known about it, and they chose not to take steps to protect against it, which would be which would create a negligence case. And why does this need to be negligence? Because then you get the punitive damages, and with the punitive damages, the award goes up, which means the attorneys get paid. Harvard didn't offer a comment when reached by NBC 10 Boston, which is smart, right? It's smart. This is not pending litigation, right? Because the case has been dismissed, but you know damn well they're going to file an appeal. So you're better off to say nothing about it, because it's once again going to become pending litigation, and then from the appeal coming back, then you'll know whether or not you even want to comment on it, which the answer is no, just don't do it, or then it's going to go back into a case of litigation. And if the dismissal is thrown out, it will likely then proceed to the next level, which, if Harvard is smart, they're going to try to settle, because they really don't want to drag this out in court. Like, it's just going to be very, very, I think, disadvantageous to drag anything like this out in court. So in case it didn't get recorded, which I don't think it did, real quick, let's go back and revisit the FTC funeral thing. Let me see. I love repeating myself. People who know me know I love repeating myself, especially when I'm the idiot and forgot to hit the record button, right? So, FTC sends warning letters to funeral homes after first undercover phone sweep. Staff found that some funeral homes provided inconsistent pricing information while others failed to provide pricing entirely. The Federal Trade Commission is sending warning letters to 39 funeral homes across the country after investigators conducted the agency's first undercover phone sweep and discovered several violations of the funeral rule, including funeral homes that failed to provide accurate pricing information or failed to give out price information entirely. So as I said earlier, I was all over this. I posted crap on LinkedIn. I posted it on Facebook talking smack about this, saying, way to go, you 39. You just had to do it, right? So tonight, with you folks listening, we can have some fun with this. The Federal Trade Commission is sending warning letters to blah, 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 blah. The funeral rule gives consumers important rights when making funeral arrangements, including requiring that funeral homes must tell persons who ask by telephone about the funeral provider's offerings or prices, any accurate information from their price list, and any other readily available information that reasonably answers the questions. I.e., if someone calls you, you have to give them information off of your general price list. You have to give them the prices that are on there, etc., etc. So it is not an excuse not to give them prices. You must give them prices, and you cannot qualify that according to the compliance guide. You can't say, well, you need to give me your name. You have to give me a contact number. Nope. They call asking for a price. You're obligated to give them the price. And I am always reminded by licensed professionals who are in the industry that I do not know what I am talking about when it comes to the FTC. And apparently, when I say things that the FTC says, that the FTC does not know its own rule either. So throughout 2023, investigators and other staff from the FTC's East Central Region, Northwest Region, Southeast Region, Southwest Region, Midwest Region, Western Region, Los Angeles, Western Region, San Francisco, and the Bureau of Consumer Protection's Division of Marketing Practices. Jesus Christ, you couldn't just said people from throughout the nation, right? placed undercover calls to more than 250 funeral homes from across the country to try to obtain price information. Wonderful. I am so happy you called 250 funeral homes out of the 20,000 plus funeral homes that are available in the United States. A sample size of 250 is absolutely outstanding. Excellent job. Staff determined that 39 funeral homes violated the funeral rule on these calls. Huh. So, okay. You know, it's basically just under somewhere in the 40s. This is like a 20%, 25%, up to 30%. 30% of the funeral homes that were basically secret shopped got busted for this. On 38 of the calls, funeral homes either refused to answer questions about pricing at all or provided inconsistent pricing for identical services. So first thing, I hate shit like that. Okay? Those are two different things. There's the people who violated the funeral rule blatantly, okay? Funeral rule blatantly, and those that were inconsistent, which means they gave you pricing, and that may be dependent upon the way that you asked the question. So when I first started the stream an hour and a half ago, what I said was, hey, how are you asking the question? Who is answering the question? Not that that's an excuse, because, again, folks, you should not have unlicensed people answering pricing questions on the damn phone. Two, you better damn well hope it's not your answering service answering those questions, because your answering services should have absolutely no pricing control whatsoever. Can anyone give pricing over the phone, or is it director only? I thought some states only directors can give pricing. And that's the clicker right there, man. Is there are states that do not require a licensee. Now, if there is a state that requires it, drop it in the comments so I can learn. If your state requires a funeral director to give pricing information, but generally speaking, and this is not a requirement of the rule. You know, this is what you're going to get asked on your board, right? National board exam is a national exam. It's not going to ask a state-specific question unless it appears in a textbook. And even then, when a state-specific question goes into item analysis, there's probably going to be people on the quality control board that are going to go, well, wait a second here. Well, we shouldn't be asking state-specific questions unless there is some compelling reason to do it. That should be on your state laws exam. We need at that pre-licensure competency level, that's not usually the best thing unless that is like a universal standard that like everyone uses. And I mean overwhelmingly everyone uses, and no one can possibly get it wrong. So in the state of Florida, there is no obligation for a licensed professional to answer the pricing questions. So you can have a part-time person that you have trained to answer the phone, field first calls, and answer pricing inquiries. You can absolutely do it. You are dumb if you do it. Okay? In my opinion, you are dumb if you do it, but you feel free to run the business the way you want to run your business. It's your business, it's your toys. I can still think that the way you're doing it is completely and utterly moronic. So, you know, take it as it comes. On one of those calls, the funeral home also misrepresented that the local health code required remains to be embalmed if more than a certain number of people wanted to view the remains, when it was not actually required by the local health code. Now that's just a good old blatant violation of the damn law. Like, that's just stupid. That's just bullshit. But again, let's look at this, okay? You had a sample size of 250 funeral homes. One of them made a misrepresentative statement. One funeral home out of 250, which is like what? 0.5% or 1% of the actual total number of funeral homes in the United States. The number is so small, it is statistically irrelevant. Like, it's just dumb to even say, oh, we caught one of them being so naughty that, oh my God, every damn one of them are doing this. Like, give me a friggin' break, dude. This is why I literally hate anything the FTC reports on, because it's just, like, seriously, your sample size is trash. Do 250 per region. Okay? You listed how many regions up here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You listed 8. Do 250 calls in every one of those regions. Oh, we don't have the personnel to do that. Then I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, if you want to create federal legislation that is sweeping over 50 states, more than, like, what is there? Like 300 million people in the United States. You're sampled 250 and you think that that's a good number by which to create sweeping national legislation? I'm sorry. You're dumber. You're dumber than dog shit. Like, no. The number has to be greater than that. Like, I'm going to call people out on stuff like this every single time. Show me a number that matters. Because if they would have said, hey, we did, 1,000 people and we got 39 that weren't doing it right. Seriously? You called 1,000 people and you found 39 problems. Bro. Not seeing why this is taking up any time. Find the morons. Problem solved. Now, if you called 1,000 people and you ended up with like 100, you ended up with 200, 300, you have a problem. You need to regulate. But 39? Come on. Come on. Embalming is a process of preserving a body after death. One could say it is the process of preserving a body after death, because I'm not aware there are other terms for preserving a body after death. Most states do not require a body to be embalmed. No state requires it. And the few states that require embalming only do so in limited circumstances, such as refrigeration is not available. Under that type of an interpretation, Florida requires embalming, right? Florida says that bodies must be refrigerated within 24 hours of a time of passing, and they may be taken out of refrigeration for purposes of identification and for funeralization, after which they must be returned to refrigeration. So the state of Florida requires refrigeration, and you as a funeral home must either have refrigeration on premises or you must have a contract with a firm to provide your storage. A or B. To say that Florida requires embalming would be false. We do not require embalming. What they permit is if a body is embalmed, that the body may remain out of refrigeration because it is not at a risk of decomposition like an unembalmed body is. So I am not sure that there is a single state in the United States that requires embalming at all. And if it's the Federal Trade Commission writing this, like, you'd think they know a little bit better that this is the fact. Like, no one requires embalming. And if they require refrigeration, that's what they actually require. They require refrigeration, not embalming in case refrigeration's not there. That doesn't mean they require embalming. On another call, the funeral home promised to send a general price list which is required to include important disclosures and itemized services. No shit, what does that have to do with sending a general price list? So, again, I don't like the way they worded this. So let me fix it. On another call, the funeral home promised to send a general price list, but instead provided a list of package prices that did not meet the funeral requirements for a general price list. Okay, so now we have to ask ourselves, kids, is that a violation of the funeral rule? Okay, is that a violation of the funeral rule? You are not under an obligation to send a price inquiry a general price list. Don't believe me? Go look at the Complying with the FTC Funeral Rule Guide. You are not under an obligation to send a general price list on a phone inquiry. You're obligated to give them pricing. I believe the compliance guide says it is a good practice to send a GPL. You are required to send a GPL if you are actively negotiating a case with someone, right? So you're doing paper arrangements. Someone lives out of state, you're handling the death locally. Then you need to deliver to them a general price list as quickly as possible. That is something I believe that the compliance guide actually states, so that they are receiving a general price list because you are in an active state of contract negotiation, however you want to look at it. But they call and they say, hey, how much is this? Here's how much it is. I'll send you a GPL, and you send them a pricing disclosure rather than a GPL. Is that a violation? And I am thinking, under the current rule, if it is a violation, the only way you're going to be able to say that is you made you gave a misrepresented statement. You misrepresented your statement, right? But you're not misrepresenting a price. You're not misrepresenting a price. You simply didn't do what you said you were going to do. You sent something different. So I find some concern with the fact that they're acting like that would be a $50,000 violation where you say you're going to send a general price list, but you sent something else. The only thing I can see them arguing is that would be a misrepresentation. You made a misrepresentation, which that's pretty weak, man. It's don't take me wrong here, folks. You're an absolute dumbass, an absolute bona fide 5-star Michelin award-winning dumbass. If you say you're going to send someone a GPL and you send them something different, do not make false promises. It is simple as that. Do not make false promises. Do what you said you were going to do. They give you the wall of shame as to the funeral homes they busted. And what's the sad part is I recognize some of those names, and I almost want to call some people and say, yo, 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 what happened there? But I'm not going to do it. Because, again, I don't know the questions that were asked. I don't know how these questions were posed. So one thing I want to tie into this, when they say that the prices weren't uniform, when they received alternate prices, well, is it because maybe one director quoted them with the medical examiner fee and one didn't? One director maybe included cash advances, one didn't? One was doing a la carte, one was doing a package pricing maybe? You know, this is the problem. Okay, this is the problem. If you're not going to release the transcripts, if you're not going to release the audio recordings so we can hear where and how it is these people screwed up, I've got to sit here and ask, hey man, I'm telling you that one of the firms that I know on that list is an excellent firm, and it blew my mind to see their name on there. I know people there. I know the owners of that firm. They do not screw around. They have a very solid expectation of their employees, and they run a solid business. So I am calling into question, what did you ask them that got them into trouble? And who was the person that you talked, above all else, who was it that you talked to? Okay? Who did you talk to? The letters reiterate that the funeral rule requires funeral providers to disclose prices and other information to people arranging funerals, including itemized price information over the telephone, and ask the funeral homes to take prompt remedial action to make sure they are no longer violating the funeral rule. Failure to comply with the rule result in penalties of up to $52,000 per violation. So this is the first thing that I want to call bullshit on. If you caught them violating, then why did you hit them with a fine? If it was that cold cut that they violated the rule, then why did you hit them with $52,000? Okay? Or is there something else going on here where maybe you didn't want to do that there? Like, do the math. Up to $52,000 per violation, you caught 39 violations, at least one firm with more than one violation on the same call. So why would you not want to fine them? You just made yourself a nice chunk of change. That helps pay for future phone calls. Not understanding what's going on here. The staff in this matter are Melissa Digg, blah, blah, who cares? The Federal Trade Commission works to promote competition, protect, and educate consumers. Absolutely. And again, I have no beef with the funeral rule. In 1980s, it was required. It was a necessity. If you would have shopped people back then, you literally would have gotten eaten alive by funeral homes. My problem is now, these folks are regulating ahead of the scale. We have consumers who simply don't like the process, saying, "Oh, well, it has to be regulated better." The fact that you don't want to do things, the fact that you don't want to have to actually talk to someone, you just want to internet shop them, does not mean that things are going bad. Like, period. That is not enough. And trying to justify more sweeping regulations against the funeral industry because you made 39 phone calls of a sample size of 250, which, let's spread that out. There was, what did we just say? There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are 9. Okay, there are 9. That's how many phone calls each one of the regions made. You are telling me that each one of these folks literally made like what, 3 calls? Or I'm sorry, 30 calls? In their region. We're not talking about a city. We're talking in their whole region. They made 30 calls each? Nah. I got to run that again. 250 phone calls. Dude, why is it? That's weird. Divided by 9 agencies. Yeah. They made 28 calls. So they made 28 calls over the last year. And they're trying to represent that sample size is accurate of the nation as a whole. That blows my mind. Like, that blows my mind. If you try to do something like this and you try to pass it off as graduate research, probably one of the first things that your review committee would look at is your sample size is trash. Actually get out there and get some surveys in. Like, seriously. The sample size is way too small for a national. My beef is still going to be, if your goal is to protect consumers and you're going to increase the regulation on funeral homes, then goddamn it, include the people that sell the same merchandise that we do on the list. Make casket discount wholesalers use a merchandise price list. Make the urn resellers on their websites use merchandise price lists. Make sure that their prices on their damn website match that piece of paper. The same crap you put funeral homes to. There should not, if your goal here is to do nothing but protect consumers from an unpleasant situation, you have no excuse, none whatsoever, to increase your regulatory base by including every person that is going to sell something to a family that could potentially be misrepresented. Do not leave some of them to the wolves by simply saying, oh, well, you know, these other places, they're already doing a good job. Well, how do you know? You don't regulate them. You don't call them. You don't do anything. So why don't you give these folks a call and see if there's a need to regulate pricing based on that? And with the excuse is probably going to be, oh, well, we don't have to because they don't do telephonic sales. They buy on the website and that's the price. So there's a no issue thing there. Like, man, I don't buy this crap. Like, if they do, then you have no problem regulating them because of the fact that, you know, life is good. And why shouldn't they? You know, what if their prices are different? If it's a $16,000 violation for a funeral home to have a price that is wrong, then why shouldn't it be a $16,000 violation for a merchandise wholesaler that's selling on the internet or from a warehouse to be under the same penalty? I don't see how a level playing field is unfair to the everyone at whole. What I see is funeral homes being unnecessarily burdened, while a huge portion of the population of sales out there is just thriving in non-regulation. You know, Walmart.com has urns on their damn website. They're under nothing whatsoever to tell consumers or protect consumers the way that we have to at the funeral home. And I know what the counter argument is. Well, prove to us that they need regulation. Okay? Prove to me they don't. Level playing field, man. That's the way I feel on it. It's the way I'm always going to feel on it. If you're going to regulate someone for selling one thing, anyone who sells it should be regulated. Plain and simple. And what does that do? It's going to kick some of the big fish out of the pool. Walmart's not going to want to deal with that. They're not going to want that merchandise on their website. All these folks selling urns and crap on Etsy, you're under the same boat as everyone else. You're selling funeral merchandise. State of Georgia, they're going through some revisions on their laws. And one of the definitions that caught my eye was their definition of funeral merchandise. Blew my mind. Funeral merchandise is going to be defined as goods sold by a funeral director used in funeral merchandise. I mean, we can pull up the definition if we want to look at it. My beef with it is it unfairly limits let's see, Georgia. Where is it? I think this is it. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. So what we're looking at here is the whoopsie. What we have here is the revisions to the laws of the state of Georgia regarding their funeral licensure and stuff like that. And this is what blew my mind right here. This is Blart. I should have paid attention to this. 46 amends Article 1, Chapter 18, Title 43. Here is Section 1, item number, I think it was 14. Yeah, 14. So the old definition would be the stuff that's being striked out. And the new definition is going to read this. Funeral merchandise means any goods that are sold or offered for sale by a funeral director for use in connection with the memorialization, interment, entombment, or inurnment of dead human bodies. So, the magic is here, kids. Anyone want to try to take a guess what's wrong with that in Professor Finn's kindergarten opinion? And I'll give you a hint. It involves funeral director. Professor Finn has a huge problem with the word funeral director. Okay, so now we're going to think of this back like it's our funeral law class. Okay, so let's turn back the clock, put on our legal cap. This is a legal definition. So now we're in court. Okay, we're in court. And you are the attorney going after a plaintiff, so you're representing the defendant, who is a seller of merchandise. They got a little building on a street corner, and they sell urns and caskets and crap like that. And you are trying them under a law regarding defective funeral merchandise. They're not a licensed funeral director. They're a private party. They just run this little casket wholesale business. All they do is they're a third-party reseller. You buy from them. They deliver to the funeral home. Have a nice day. They make their, couple $100 of profit. They screw the funeral home out of a sale, and everyone lives happily ever after because you got it cheap. Well, what's the problem now if you're trying to go after them because of the fact that it is defective funeral merchandise? It isn't funeral merchandise anymore. Let that sink in. It is not funeral merchandise. Because the new definition of funeral merchandise is any goods that are sold or offered for sale by a funeral director for use in connection with memorialization, interment, entombment, or inurnment of dead human bodies. In order for it to be funeral merchandise, it must be sold by a funeral director. And you bought it from some dude out of a store on a street corner. So it is no longer funeral merchandise. It's just general merchandise. And could that be fatal to a case? Absolutely, because it can't be considered that class of merchandise because it's not sold by the funeral director. And I stated that as such to the party that I was writing back to, saying, this is a really dangerous definition. And I don't see any reason why it should not just read, funeral merchandise means any goods that are sold or offered for sale for use in connection with the memorialization, interment, entombment, or inurnment of dead human bodies. Someone would need to justify to me why you put the words funeral director in there. Why are you excluding other people who sell the same exact things? So if I buy a casket from a funeral director, it's considered funeral merchandise, and any laws regarding funeral merchandise apply. If I buy that same casket at Walmart.com and have it delivered to my funeral director, it is not funeral merchandise. It is not considered funeral merchandise. And any laws regarding funeral merchandise do not apply to it, which absolutely protects that seller. And they can get away with whatever they want. And the other problem could be is if a funeral director wanted to circumvent that, they could simply refer someone to a third-party wholesaler to buy their stuff and never have to deal with it. They could literally create their own casket discount warehouse and just sell product through the warehouse and say, hey, it's not my business, it's not my problem. And they could try to get creative with circumventing laws that way. I think that's a really, really dangerous definition for funeral merchandise. State of Florida, their funeral merchandise definition is exactly what I said. Any goods or service used for memorializations, etc. If you're selling it and it's used for that, it's considered funeral merchandise, which is important because you may buy something that is not intended for funeral use and then sell it for that purpose. One thing that funeral directors and establishments may do is they may try to find closeout merchandise in the form of boxes or vases with covers, anything. And then say, oh man, that would make a good urn. And they may buy it at a very competitive price and then put it in their showroom to sell it like an urn. It is, by itself, not funeral merchandise. But the moment you put it in your showroom, the moment you are offering it for sale, for use in connection with memorialization, interment, entombment, or inurnment of dead human bodies, it becomes funeral merchandise. Not because a funeral director is selling it, but because of how it is to be used. And I always tell this story. One of the most beautiful urns I had ever seen was when I was working as I don't even think I was an apprentice at the time. I was just working full-time at the funeral home. And this family came in to drop off this urn. I brought it back, and I showed it off to Alec, who was the funeral director at the funeral home. And he was like, wow, that is a really nice urn, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, man, I wonder where they got this, because, working at the funeral home, I had access to all the catalogs, Batesville, Aurora, you name it. I had access to all their stuff. And didn't see it in any of them. And one day, just happened to be walking through Walmart, and I got called by Alec for an unrelated purpose. And as I was walking down an aisle, I said, hey, you're not going to believe this. I found the urn. And what the urn was a literal cookie jar. It was a set of 3 jars, blue glass with a silver top, that came in a box. I think it was like $29.96 for the box of 3. And what this family did is they bought this box of 3, and they just used the biggest one as an urn. You don't think a funeral home can buy a couple of those boxes? Take them to the funeral home, put the urn on display, and for the one urn, charge $99, $100, $125 for the urn? Absolutely can. Does it matter that it was made for funeralization? Absolutely not. But once you use it for such, Florida law says it better meet all the requirements of anything that needs to be in there. And in all honesty, it would make no difference whether it's a Walmart cookie jar or a handcrafted artisan blown glass jar. It's still a glass jar. All right, folks, let's kill that. Y'all not talking a lot tonight. I almost feel bad for y'all, but then again, I did start I think an hour late because I didn't know how to push a button. So truth be told, folks, I'm gonna call it quits because I've been talking for 2 hours, even though I started the live stream late. It's been a long day. I'm pretty tired. So we'll be doing this again in March. I'm gonna advertise that with a bit more advance notice. I honestly didn't think I was gonna do a live stream this time around. I was gonna kind of take February off. I've just got so much going on with the new position. I've got a billion things on the fire. And I told you folks last time I was getting a soundboard. I can't wait to get my sound rig all set back up. I unboxed the soundboard. I put it on my table next to me, and I haven't done a single thing trying to set it up with the computer. It was it was crazy. I've been so damn busy, and when you're not busy, it's just like you want to die on the couch. You don't want to do anything. Yeah, big man, Big Kenny. Yo, if you can come down to Boston, that'd be great. So, folks, if you're in the Boston or surrounding areas, the American Board of Funeral Service Education is going to be doing their annual conference at the Omni, April 8th through the 12th. Generally speaking, if students want to attend that, we usually figure out a way for y'all to come in and sit in, but for the most part, it's boring for students just because of the fact that, we're talking about educator stuff. We're not a funeral service trade organization, so we're not going to have tons and tons of stuff geared towards the industry and all the cool toys and technology. We're educators. We're going to have stuff geared towards education and people who want to have their products in schools and stuff like that. But if you want to come down and see what the educators do, what we talk about, stuff like that, most of our committees are open to anyone who's interested. You can come in, you can listen, and you can hear what they're talking about, like the program committee, how they schedule events, the curriculum committee, how we talk about curriculum, what the hot topics are, stuff like that. That's it's an excellent opportunity for you to do that. And I mean, absolutely, if you want to come down and meet Finn, I'm going to be there the entire time. Like, I am so looking forward to going back to Massachusetts and spending a couple of days. I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to meet with family and go crazy and do stuff like that. But I'm absolutely going to go back. I'm going to go visit Methuen, where I grew up. I grew up in Methuen in Lawrence. So I'm going to reach out to a couple of my old peeps on Facebook and see if anyone wants to go get a beer and catch up over the last, 30 years of absence. I've already dropped myself on Google Maps to see, how things have changed, how times have changed. Going to go visit my old church. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy to see, what 30 years of change does to the area. I think Dan said some of you guys are going to come down for your tour of the program. They just public. You know what? Let's look at it before I dive off here, because I mean, probably got another 15, 20 minutes in me. Just, I should probably take the Shriner baseball cap off. I want to throw some Shriner pride out. So for those of you who aren't familiar with fraternities or the Shriners or anything like that, the Shriners are a pendant body of Masonry, so Freemasons. So if you are a Freemason, you can elect to join the Shriners. And the head of a Shriner group is called the potentate. Okay, so the potentate of the shrine would be like the president of the club. And about a month and a half ago, the past potentate of Egypt Shriners, which is the Shriner group that I'm affiliated with. I'm a member of Egypt Shriners in Tampa, Florida. His name was Sir Bob Howell. And he was a member of my Blue Lodge, my Masonic Lodge. Nice guy. Super nice guy. And he passed away. So I'm dropping my informal Shriner bling today in honor of my boy. Hoping that wherever he is in eternity, he is having a good time catching up with all the other brothers of the Lodge who've passed on. Let's go ahead and get the shared screen back on here. Let's hit the old transition button. Boom. So, folks, American Board website, www.abfse.org. Anything you've ever wanted to know about funeral service education as an organization or as a student, potential student, if you're an educator, this is the place you go to take a peek at it. And of importance for you folks as students, especially if you're looking at joining a funeral service program, we have a section dedicated to the accredited programs. You have a directory by state. You can see, so let's go ahead and pull it. Massachusetts, there you are, and it pulls everyone in Massachusetts. So right up top, Cape Cod Community College, over in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, run by my boy Dan Shea. The website, and you can see how they're doing overall. So back in 2022, hey man, you know, pretty good. 100% employed in 100% employed in funeral service. So people that were going to the school when they leave, they're basically, they got jobs waiting for them. Numbers have gone down a little bit, and you know that's expected. It's going to fluctuate year to year, but still really good numbers. 2020 was pandemic, and also I believe that's the year their program started. So they're not going to have time before that. They're not going to have digits because Cape Cod stepped up. Like Dan and his folks up there at Cape Cod Community College stepped up when the University of Massachusetts Amherst system decided to unexpectedly close the Mount Ida College of Funeral Service. Literally, that the semester came to an end. They announced that they're shutting it all down. Have a nice day. They're going to matriculate people to other colleges around the area to finish their degrees. The problem was there was no other funeral college that was able to step up and take it. So Cape Cod literally created a program on the fly to get these folks in there and get them graduated. So major kudos. National board statistics. Again, 2020 didn't really have anything because the program didn't really exist. That's the year they put in candidacy. You can see the national pass rates, 73%, 64% for sciences. National pass rates weren't too hot, and pass rates have been pretty low since the pandemic. 2021, pass rate 100% for the arts, 0% for the for the sciences, and that's just bad luck. You had one candidate. So this is the important thing when looking at statistics, folks. You have to look at the sample size, and you have to pay attention to what you're reading. They had one person that wasn't even a graduate of their program, basically, 2 years getting instruction only from them. This was a person they likely got with the majority of their education through Mount Ida, went through all of that BS of their school shutting down, and they simply didn't pass, half the test, and that hurt them. Following year, though, they had 2 people take on both, and they 100% pass rate. So, there's some success going on there. And with y'all graduating, Big Kenny, you need to be part of that 100% number going forward, bro. I'm holding you to that expectation. You worked hard for it. I got no doubt that you're going to just absolutely trash that exam, bro. So you can see anything you want to know. It gives you the history of the school, anything good, anything bad. And again, this does not mean that the school is good, does not mean the school is bad. This is simply the history of the school as it pertains to accreditation. Every school is going to have challenges. Everything is going to have crests and troughs. It happens in cycles. It happens in waves. And see, this was the thing. Is effective August 27, 2018, Cape Cod Community College was approved to teach out students enrolled in the now defunct Mount Ida College AS degree program. And where you can go to order those transcripts if you are a graduate. Because if you're a graduate, you have to be able to get transcripts. Well, you're going to get those through University of Massachusetts system. You're not going to necessarily get those directly off of the out of the Cape Cod website. So what you folks can do is under meetings, tells you what you need to know about the 60-second conference. I actually haven't turned in my my registration paperwork yet. This stuff came out like this week on Wednesday. I haven't even had time to put in my stuff for it. So let's see. Where is... That's the announcement. Schedule. This is what we're looking for, is a schedule. If there's going to be a tour of Cape Cod, it'll be on here. In legit, I do not know... Oh, that's not bad. So you folks are south. All right. You folks are south. Cool. See, I'm thinking if you're Cape Cod Community College, man, you're over here. Like, you're right on the tip. And I have fond memories of going with my mom and dad over to Provincetown. So, that's what I'm thinking is you folks are out here in the curve somewhere. No, you're actually like actual mainland. I'm a little disappointed right now. Because I was hoping to, go visit the college, go out to Provincetown, get some saltwater taffy, stuff like that. So, yeah, a tour would be likely. Let's see. Wednesday's the first day. I'm probably going to get there probably like Monday or Tuesday. If it's usual for me, I get there a day early in case I have travel problems, and then I spend the next day going visiting cemeteries, checking the local sites, stuff like that. Um, First person is Faith Haug. Dude, she rocks. She's been in funeral service a relatively short amount of time, and she's just taken the thing by storm. She is so cool. I'm so proud to know her. Constitution Bylaws Committee, strategic plan, blah, 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 evening tour, pre-registration on Google form distributed separately. So that's probably it. That's probably the tour of the campus. Ghost tour, Red Sox game. If it's, I don't know, man. Damn. The last time I was at Fenway, I was with Father Tom Terranova of Holy Rosary Catholic Church, along with, I think, my 7th grade class. First and only baseball game I saw at Fenway. And I think that was Wade Boggs's rookie year. So I got to see him like fresh into the AAA leagues. That guy was a beast. Wade was amazing back then. Like he would come out of the dugout and you just know this guy was just going to destroy everyone in front of him. Like just absolute power player. Next day, got some mentoring, some professional development. Yeah, so realistically, if there is going to be a tour of the campus, it will be that Wednesday night, and then really by Friday things are wrapping up. The ghost tour looks cool. I might have to do that separate. I might have to do I love seeing the schools. Like that is a big. No one has to convince me to want to go see schools. I love seeing the different schools. And Red Sox versus the Orioles. They better kick their ass. Like seriously, they better kick their ass. So not a lot there for students, folks. Unfortunately, it's not like a trade show or something like that. But if you do want to come down, meet the educators, that's an opportunity to do it. Let's see. Darla writes, I'm embarrassed to say that I don't actually know what Masons do. Every Freemason I've asked about have been extreme. Yeah, dude. All the different states, all the grand jurisdictions, Masons do crazy. Like they it's always nuts. So here in the United States, here's some cool stuff between states versus international Masons. So one thing you'll find with American Masons, overwhelmingly, they like to show off their Masons. They'll have their rings, they'll have their bling, they'll have their stickers and badges on cars and stuff like that. If you meet Masons from the United Kingdom, some Masons from Canada, you are much, much, much less likely to see them wearing any jewelry or anything like that would distinguish them of being Masons. They take that secrecy thing a little bit further than Americans do. So ultimately, what is it that Masons are? Okay? So my Masonic pedigree is I'm a member of Gulf Beach Lodge 291 free accepted Masons in the wonderful city of Madeira Beach, Florida. I'm a past master of that lodge. I was a district chairperson for education for at the time, the 21st Masonic District. In the time that I have been a Mason, I've known, three of the people that I knew from my Masonic district. I would like to say we're friends, but if they said no, really just applied acquaintance, I wouldn't be offended. But my Masonic brothers, 3 of them have been Grand Masters of Masons of the most worshipful Grand Lodge of the state of Florida. So I know some people in Masonry in Florida. And these are amazing, amazing dudes. Love them to death. We are a philanthropic fraternal organization for men. That's what we are. And we take men from all walks of life, from all nationalities, from all religions, and we make them better. The overarching motto of Masonry, no matter what state, what country, is they make good men better. And there are some appendant bodies that are affiliated with Freemasons. So for women, we have Daughters of the Nile. We have the Order of the Eastern Star. I'm also a member of the Eastern Star. It's primarily a women's organization, but Masons can be involved. So I'm a member of the Order of the Eastern Star Gulf Beach Chapter 241. who is also housed out of Gulf Beach Lodge. Wonderful group of sisters. Wonderful, wonderful. I really do miss being a part of my lodge because it's such an amazing and great group of people. Um, Shriners are an appendant body, so they are comprised of Masons, and Masonry always has kind of like a focus as to who it is that they have their philanthropy towards. So, General Masons, Blue Lodge Masons, our philanthropy really is towards anyone deserving of it and each other. So, we have, back in the day, we would have orphanages we would sponsor for children, especially children of Masons who maybe parents died or something happened. We also have retirement homes for Masons and their spouses. So if they become infirm in old age and they would otherwise be like out on the street, we have nursing homes that are basically governed by Masons, administrated by Masons for them. And then we really just support any fraternities or any philanthropies that we want. It is very common for Masonic temples or Masonic lodges. There's no real distinction between Masonic temple versus Masonic lodge. It's the building where Masons meet. There's no real distinction what makes a temple versus a lodge. Temples tend to be larger buildings, and many different Masonic orders will have individual rooms in there where maybe York Rite meets, or Scottish Rite or Eastern Star might have their own separate room. Again, temples tend to be larger buildings, but not necessarily that's a requirement. Masonic lodges typically limit their philanthropy to the local communities. Like if you, my lodge is in Madeira Beach, and if we are, and we have a wonderful scholarship fund that awards a $1,000 scholarship. I think $2,000 or $3,000 scholarships every year to deserving high school students going on to a 4-year degree at a Florida university. The only criteria is they have to come from the local community. So basically it's limited to only people in Pinellas County, Florida. So if you go to Hillsborough County or Pasco County, we're not going to give you a scholarship. We're there in that community. There are lodges in those other communities. If they want to do scholarships, they can do that. Shriners are more of a national body. And what distinguishes Shriners is we wear fezzes. So in mortuary school, you learn that Masons have their white leather aprons. That's the badge of a Mason. Shriners have their red fezzes. And what I did is I got a badge that would go on the front of a fez. You can buy the tassels that go on fezzes separate from fezzes on Masonic supplies. And then I got some red baseball caps, and I made some Shriner baseball fezzes for myself and some close friends. So these aren't things that you can buy like off the internet anywhere. This is something I literally had to make. My mom and I actually put these together before she passed. So anyone who has one of these is very special to me. And again, that's why I'm wearing this right now. I actually don't have my fez with me. My fez and my aprons are back in Miami. Our philanthropy as Shriners are to the Shriners Hospital for Children. We've reduced a number of those hospitals over the years. Unfortunately, we've like any of these men's organizations, we tend to suffer attrition when it comes to membership as older populations die off. We're seeing some renewed interest right now in the Masonic organizations, and for Shriners Hospital for Children's, they focus on burns and they focus on orthopedic care for children. So basically, the big things they're doing right now is they focus on burns, and they're focusing on spina bifida. So they will do corrective surgeries, treatments at no cost whatsoever to the patient. So there are St. Jude's Children's Hospitals, which are supported by basically Catholic charities, and they do general medicine and exploratory medicine and radical medicine for children. Shriners Hospital focuses their efforts typically on developmental stuff and burns. I'm proud to be a Shriner. Like, I'm really proud to be a Shriner. Let's see. So again, some people are secretive, some people aren't. I know what questions I can answer that doesn't get me in trouble into the sovereign jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Florida. So if any of you folks ever have questions about Masons, what they do, how to get Masonic funerals, stuff like that, like please reach out to me. If you don't know how to get a Masonic funeral lined up, I am a very valuable resource for that because I will literally walk you through what you need to do. In actuality, one of my favorite Masonic stories I have it involves a Massachusetts Mason, a guy who retired to Florida. We had to do, I think it was a 50-year pin presentation. So there are certain milestones in your Masonic life that if you get that far, your Grand Lodge recognizes you. And we typically get pins at I think we start in Florida at the 25-year. So once you hit 25 years of Mason, you get recognized, and then 25, I think 40, 50, and I think we even have 75-year presentations. I never got to do a 75. I got to do a couple of 50s. But when a Mason relocates out of state, it's kind of a problem to get that Mason into a lodge and get a pin presentation. So what ends up happening is the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts reached out to the Grand Lodge of Florida and said, hey, we got this guy who's got a 50-year pin coming up. Do you have a lodge in the vicinity that would be able to either convey it to him at the lodge or go to his home and present it? And what happens is if we can't get them to lodge, whether it's an illness, infirmity, whatever it is, and when I say we can't get them to lodge, I mean we offer to pick them up, drive them to lodge, give them dinner. Like, it's our pleasure to have them. Then we will go to the house and we will do it. And that's what I ended up doing is men are an interesting gender, especially as we get older. We don't like to broadcast our infirmities. And we get really embarrassed if we can't climb stairs or stuff like that. And that's unfortunate because it would have been wonderful to get him into lodge and not just have 12 guys hopefully show up. If he would have come to lodge, he would have 40 or 50 people around him to recognize his achievement. Instead, it was a dozen, which is still pretty damn good to get 12 guys showing up at a lunch hour on a weekday to visit a guy at the house and present him his 50-year pin. And I will tell you, it is one of my most cherished memories to go to that guy's house and sit with him and talk with him. And my greatest regret is I didn't just call in for the rest of the day. But when you're a funeral director, you don't get those type of luxuries, man. You know you have your afternoon appointments. You can't shovel that on anyone else. I worked for a relatively small firm. It's not we had 3 or 4 directors in the wings waiting to pick up that load. I had such a wonderful time talking to the guy. And he was a retired, I think it was a retired cop. And he was also a bagpiper. And when I walked in, a big picture of him in his kilt, and I was able to pull up a picture of my Masonic installation where I was in full Scottish regalia, and we just had such a good time talking. And a week and a half later, the guy died unexpectedly. And I ended up going to his funeral, which, again, it's one of those things, man, I got to go to this guy's house and do this 50-hour pin that's going to blow my lunch hour. Because, folks, those of you who work as apprentices and you're in funeral homes, you know what I'm talking about. If you have the 10 minutes to suck down a sandwich before your next thing, you're literally not chewing. You're just shoveling it in there so you can get something in your stomach and move on to the next task. So I had to, drive down to this guy's house 10, 15 minutes down the road, have to do the presentation, pretend to want to be there, that sort of stuff, because that's what's going through your head because it's so inconvenient to your workday. And I'm glad I did. And I cherish having done it, and I feel like a complete asshole for being like, oh man, I really don't want to go and, delegate it or shovel it off to someone else. So then he passes away. And it's a long day at the funeral home. Exhausting. This is day 9 or day 10 because my weekend off is coming, which means I've been on call the entire weekend, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, you know what? The funeral home is 5 minutes down the road. It's only the visitation because the service is going to be out of state. I should just go down there and say hi. I was the guy that presented his 50-year pin. I really just need to go down there and just do it. So we go down there, to my competitor's firm. Literally, we're on the 6700 block. They're at like I think they're like at the 90s. So it's about like a literal 7-minute drive down the thoroughfare. So I get there and everyone's piling up outside. And the fun part is, folks, when you go into funeral service and you go to other funeral homes and visit other services, you're either going to do one of two things. You're going to see that there is something that you want to steal from them to make you better at what you do, or you're going to realize really what type of hot trash this firm does, and you're embarrassed because you know you do it so much better. There's like no middle ground. You're either satisfied and impressed and you really have a good feeling about how these people are putting things forward, or you're the exact opposite. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe the family's having to go through this. I would do it so much better. So we get to the firm. You got like 30 or 40 people in the lobby, and the visitation started like 10 or 15 minutes ago. There's no funeral director in sight. There's no one saying the visitation is open. And like I said, I'm exhausted. And I just realized I'm going to be that guy. I'm just going to be the SOB that just walks in and the hell with it, because if there's no one there directing traffic, there's no part-time people to say the visitation is open. And I got there like 10 minutes prior to visitation start. So now I've been sitting around like 20 minutes waiting for something to happen. And so I just walk in and, I feel so bad because the family's just sitting there talking to each other, wondering probably why no one is going in. And it's because the damn funeral director literally just never said, folks, the visitation is now open. The family's ready to receive you. Like, how hard is that? That's literally 3 seconds. So I walk in there and I start walking up, and his widow sees me coming in. And I shit you not, she dropped her conversation, came right out of the aisle, and started walking with me with tears in her face. And she was so happy to see me. I'm getting goosebumps again. Like, every time I tell this story, I just relive it all. And she was so thrilled that I was able to come to the visitation and introduce me to her son and her daughter and their spouses, because after we left, all he talked about was the guys from Gulf Beach Lodge who came down, and he was planning on coming to visit the lodge. Like, he was expecting to get better. And he talked to his son, he talked to everyone he talked to about how great these guys were and how happy he was that, we sacrificed the time out of our day and come visit, blah, blah, blah. And then, I feel like a real asshole because I almost blew this off because, I had a long day. And, you can't show that embarrassment. You can't show it, because you don't want them to think it for a second that your mind was in another place. So, the only thing that I can possibly muster is, well, it's my absolute honor to be here. And I'm not lying when I told you that it was absolutely one of the most cherished Masonic moments I have, meeting and talking with her husband, and I am so glad that I could bring him that level of joy. Like, seriously. And, then when her son says, he just wouldn't stop talking about it, and you realize this isn't an exaggeration, like, we made this guy's week. It just hits you. And when people ask me, like, why am I a Mason? It's because of stuff like that. And I'm not saying you can't find that in the Knights of Columbus. I'm not saying you can't find that in the Oddfellows. I'm not saying you can't find that in other fraternities. I'm saying that's what I found in Masonry, and that's what Masonry means to me. And that's why it's important to me. So, that Massachusetts 50-year pin presentation was amazing. I can't remember his name. As awful as that is, I can't remember his name. I'm reasonably sure if I pulled open my scrapbook, I still have the prayer card from that service. And, I walked in, I said my prayer, I walked up to the casket. Whether they're Catholic, whether they're not Catholic, when I go in to a visitation and I sit and I go to the kneeler, I always do an Ave Maria, and always do I do a Hail Mary, I do an Our Father, and that's just my custom, every single time, no matter who they are. I pray for their souls' peaceful repose. And came back and I excused myself. That, people had seen me walk in, so now they're starting to filter in. And it's not even my funeral. But I wanted to excuse myself. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and leave. Your guests are starting to filter in, and you should be with your guests. But if you ever have any issues whatsoever, please call the lodge if you need help. We have plenty of guys. If something happens around the house, we have carpenters. We have just about anyone you would need. And we will be inviting you, as long as you are in the area, to our widow's dinner. You are now part of our family at the lodge. It doesn't just stop here. And that's a very important thing for us. Like, we really do take care of our widows. So fact of the matter is, a Massachusetts Mason is a very important memory of mine. Let's see, top-notch program, Cape Cod. Yeah, absolutely. Professor Shea does an amazing job there. And I am so... I didn't get to hang out with him at the last American board meeting as much as I want. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that this time around because, man, like, I did not imagine how many places at once I would have to be as president of the American board. But there's literally not enough time in those 3 days for me to be everywhere and do everything and meet everybody. Like, I miss that, like being just a normal guy walking around and just conversing and hanging out and having a good time and attending professional development instead of like having places to be and meetings to be at. Hyannis. Cape Cod is on Cape. A funeral program is at Bridgewater State. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Is the saltwater taffy better in Massachusetts compared to Florida? Oh, absolutely. Like, absolutely. No one can convince me otherwise. And part of that problem is when you're a kid and you grow up in Massachusetts, the candy is always going to be better in Massachusetts just because that's where you had it first. And your childlike perception is tainting you. So you don't really have a choice not to remember it as better. But, ask me again in May, and I'll tell you if it's as good as I remember it. But I can already tell you, like, I'm already disappointed because when I grew up in Methuen, we moved to Lawrence for a couple of years, and there was a hot dog stand right there on the Merrimack River. And I was looking forward to going back there after 30 years and getting a damn hot dog because it was right on the mirror. Like, it's the craziest thing that if you... they built this damn shack basically on planks holding up the shack over the Merrimack. Like, it's not on the road. It is literally over the river, held up by supports against the side of the river wall. Not even like pylons going into the riverbed. It's crazy. And when I dropped in the Google Maps and I pulled it up, it turned into a taco stand, and now it's closed. And I am absolutely disappointed not going to be able to go back there and get a damn hot dog if I get back to Lawrence. Great stream. Glad I could catch this one. Yeah, glad to see you again, Madge Dragon. Hey, thanks for tuning in. For some of you, I started late. I friggin' started the stream and I forgot to hit the go live. So, like the first hour is talking to myself, wondering why like no one's in chat, why I have nothing pulling up on my statistics. Angela, good evening. As a student, I've heard school teachings may not align with real-world practices. Wondering if I'm too literal with textbooks. Any advice? So, this is something that I have tried to go out of my way to debunk. I am sick and tired of this bullshit where licensed professionals say, the stuff you learn in school is not applicable. Once you're out of there, get that for the test, and then I'll teach you the way it's supposed to be. Like, Jesus H. Christ. Could y'all please stop that? It is the worst thing that you possibly do when you tell your apprentices that what they're learning in school is not relevant. These same clowns will tell you that the people that have written and edited the embalming textbook don't know anything about embalming. You're going to learn everything about embalming once you get into the field. Sharon G. Mascarello has like 30 plus years of embalming experience. She has forgotten more about embalming than I am ever going to learn, and I was a clinical instructor for 10 years. The woman makes me look like a level 1 noob. She is phenomenal at what she does. And people will literally slander her just because she wrote the textbook. Despite the fact, if you actually read about her accomplishments, the textbook is the smallest tip of the iceberg. The problem becomes, from the 1950s through the 1990s into the 2000s, not everything you're going to learn in school is going to be immediately practical to your work environment. I had to learn the Jewish names of the different pieces of the wrappings. Do you really think I have ever once used that in the literal history of my time in funeral service? And the answer is a resounding hell no. But do I know what the Kaddish is? Absolutely. Have I prayed the Kaddish? A lot. Because we have a thing out there called Reform Judaism, Messianic Judaism. And those are the ones that you're usually going to get at a non-Jewish funeral home. When you go to law school, you learn the breadth of all law. Because you're going to take a test that is going to pop a bunch of multiple choice questions and an essay at you on the entire breadth of general law. And then you will likely never look at it again. And you will practice the law that you are going to practice. That doesn't mean it's irrelevant. So when you go into a rural community where you have two types of Baptists, Southern Baptists and those who wish they were Southern Baptists, you are unlikely to care about anything to do with the Roman Catholic Church. But if you go into a community where you have Catholic churches, you are likely not going to have to care about non-liturgical architecture. And it is a travesty when people in the industry say, you know, your professors don't even really know what they're talking about. I'm the guy that just did the survey, and it is a very crappy survey by my own admission, but a survey nonetheless. If you are teaching a funeral service related subject in mortuary school, you are either an expert in the field. So if you're teaching funeral law, you are either a lawyer or you are a licensed professional. If you are teaching funeral directing, if you're teaching embalming, restorative art, you're a licensed professional. Period. You are a licensed professional. The smallest number of people teaching in schools are people like myself, who are academic only, not working at a funeral home even on a part-time basis. I am the smallest population by my survey. The largest population shows that people are working in funeral homes at a minimum on a part-time basis. And the other individuals who are academic onlys are also not like me. I had 5 years experience as a licensee when I became a professor. The others, minimum time, 10 to 12 years of experience. And what were they? Owners and managers. Which is why they're now full-time academics, because they sold their funeral homes and they can afford to take a cheaper job and work part-time here or there. Most of these folks have over 18 years of experience. And they were funeral home owners. They were managers. Or they owned funeral home cemetery combos. And so when another practitioner, oh, these people don't know what the hell they're talking about, bullshit, they don't. Keep your mouth shut so you don't show off your ignorance. Now, in fairness to them, no one tells them that the majority of professors in mortuary science schools, funeral service schools, are licensed professionals. They don't know that that is a requirement. But even when they are told, they still just kind of roll their eyes and just like, oh, whatever. It upsets me to no end when people say stuff like that. I was an expert witness on a case, and I haven't done a lot of them, but the ones I have done, I think I have done very well with. Opposing counsel made a snarky remark. I think I wrote something like a 20-page analysis of how this body was embalmed. And his remark to me, in front of the judge, because again, this is a bench trial, it's in front of an administrative law judge, was, oh, you can tell that from just 10 photos. You have two options when someone says something like that. If you're cool, calm, and collected, you can just say yes. If you're Professor Finn, and you're not going to take that shit from some guy with a law degree, the response is, I could tell it from 8. The other 2 just reinforced it. And you'll know that because I only used 8 of your photos. Everything I said in that report is based off of sound embalming technique in theory, personal experience, and textbook. And I can tell you with certainty that if you just follow the procedures in your textbook on how to embalm a body, you literally never have to take another person's workshop or whatever. I'm not saying that there's not value in doing that, going and hitting up Monica Torres or the Fountain National Academy. Like, you want to go to these things and you want to learn from these people and pick up some of their conveniences and some of their tricks. But if you just opened your embalming book, go to the chapter you need to go to, and then follow it by the numbers, you will get the same exact experience over time, and you will get just as good as them if you have any talent in the preservative arts. So when people say, oh, the textbook is no good, that shelf right there, 5th edition, 6th edition, Body Types by Ray Slocum, the Champion School of Embalming textbook. And in Google Books, I've even got an 1899 embalming textbook. You know what's crazy? They all say the same thing. The earlier the book, the less knowledge as to why it happens. The more modern the book, the more of the science as to how and why it occurs. But it's the same thing. Apply phenol. Do this, do that. It has not changed in literally 100 years. The technology has gotten better. The chemicals have gotten better. The knowledge as to why it works has gotten better. You folks got people out there like Ben Schmidt, Dr. Damon De La Cruz. You've got the Verney Fountains, the Sharon G. Mascarellos. Hell, in Massachusetts, you got Dodge Chemical Company over in Billerica. They got a bunch of guys that are massive talents, that are always writing good articles in the Dodge magazine. One of the best embalming magazines you can get in the United States is the Dodge magazine. If you just scratch out the Dodge products in their articles, and if you know what products are what in the different chemical catalogs, solid advice on how to embalm a body. Granted, they're there to sell product, and they want you to use product. But what a surprise. Use product, get good results because you use product. Use enough product to get the results. Like, don't be surprised. This is what kills me with people. They'll put like a pea-size drop of shaving cream on, and then they'll shave, and they wonder why they get razor rash on the neck. We're not even talking about dead people. We're talking about shaving themselves. If you're not going to put enough shave cream on, don't expect the razor to glide. And if you're going to put less shave cream on a dead body than you would yourself, oh, that stuff's expensive. Why are you surprised when you get razor rash? And you got to cosmetize over it because you got razor rash. I don't understand it. And then your excuse is, oh, that was just bad luck. Not every single time when you don't use enough product. Like, product is there to be used. Darrell says, "Oh, perfect. Perhaps we need more Masonic lodges." There would be no need for Masonry if people just cared. There'd be no need for Masonry if churches just did their job. Right? I was listening to a pastor on YouTube. Every so often I'll just listen to random things. And he said something really important. The Bible contains 3 types of law. There's moral law, religious law, and civil law. Because one of those things out there is, how come Christians only follow X number of rules out of the Bible and not all of them? I.e., why, if you are a Christian, do you not keep kosher? Why do you not wear natural garments? Why do you not abstain from pork? Why do you not abstain from shellfish? Why do you not separate dairy from the meats? That is literal law in the Bible. And his argument was very good. It was very simple. It's very clear. There are 3 types of law in the Bible: moral law, civil law, religious law. We are not part of that society, so we do not have to follow the civil law. That was the law of the time. So why would we follow law for a civilization that we are not a part of? 2, the religious law. The religious law, again, applies to that society. So why would we follow that? There are certain religious laws that are applicable that we did bring into Christianity that are now our obligation as Christians to follow those laws. And the last one was the moral law. There are certain moral laws that we share and that we must follow because they are moral laws, not based on society. They are based from God himself. If you're a Christian, God is male. The moral law is summed up in 11 commandments. The 10 that Moses was given, and the one that Jesus of Nazareth declared. Love one another as I have loved you. I give you a new commandment. I give you another moral law. Love one another. Masons believe in friendship, love, and charity. If churches would focus on friendship, love, and charity, the world would be a better place because there are so many people that are part of religious establishments and religious beliefs. And that doesn't mean that the atheist does not have a say. They can just be friendly, loving, and charitable people. Because it is perfectly reconcilable to be friendly, loving, peaceable, and charitable, absent a faith system. It's refreshing to hear how close the community is between Masons and Shriners. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, every organization has something going on. One of the problems is people don't want to become Masons, they want to become Shriners. So they view the Masons as a stepping stone to Shriner, and then they never do anything with the Masons. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you're missing an aspect of it if that's what you do. I'm guilty of it. I joined the Order of the Eastern Star because I became master of my lodge. Not because I wanted to be a member of the Eastern Star, but if I have a chapter of the Eastern Star in my building, it is not really... I viewed it as not very proper that if I have a group of people meeting in my building, that I need to support them with my membership and my time as best as I can. So I joined them because they simply existed in my building. Nothing more than that. Wonderful bunch of ladies. Wonderful bunch of ladies. And I will tell you that the Eastern Star has one of the most beautiful rituals of any fraternity, sorority, any sort of organization I've ever been a member of. Beautiful ritual. I'm still not very active I just don't have time. I'm not even that active in masonry anymore. In fact, the only time I go back to my lodge is for installation. I mean, granted, I was living in Miami 3.5 hours away. Now I'm in Texas 18 hours away. But I would fly back, and I have flown back every January, but this last one, I caught COVID. I couldn't travel back. It's the first time in a literal decade that I did not attend the installation of my lodge. And for 10 years, I've either been an installing officer or I've been the musician. And I was really friggin' upset that I got sick and I could not be the installing musician in my lodge. Like, it really upset me. And it was no small source of frustration. Sometimes I feel like sense of community and philanthropy is dying. Yeah. But also, Gen Zers, Gen Yers, they're looking for stuff like that. They want those personal experiences. They're finding that. They're not finding that in religion. They're finding that in outside organizations, and that's why we're seeing a resurgence in membership in some of these organizations. And Masons are still to some level frowned upon. It's by definition, one would say it's a sexist organization. It's one of the largest accusations is it's a boys' club, and yeah, it's a boys' club. Absolutely, unapologetically, it's a boys' club. And it will never be anything other than a boys' club. Just like the Eastern Star will always be, at its heart, a women's organization. I think personally it is good that there are organizations that are separated by gender. We act differently. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls. We will act differently when we are in groups of our own, in our comfort zones. I also think it's amazingly and intensely important that we have co-ed institutions where we can work collaboratively towards things. And there are no lack of honor societies for that. Oddfellows, Elks, Lions, etc. I strongly recommend that if you're looking for a place to go and things to do, and you don't want to do Masons, or you don't want to be a Knight of Columbus, or you don't want to be an Eastern Star or the Order of the Beauseant, Elks, they love to party. They love the party. They have a great philanthropy. I am not an Elk. Okay? My granduncle was an Elk. He was also a Mason. And if I had stayed in Florida longer, in Madeira Beach, I would have joined the Elks down the street from my Masonic lodge. Just because they're close to us. We have a great relationship together. They let us use their parking. When we have a big event, we let them use ours. A bunch of our boys joined the Elks to secure privileges over at their lodge so that after our events, we could go over to the Elks Lodge and have a beer and hang out and do whatever. And what happens when we're over there having beers? We're providing funds for their philanthropies because we're funding their lodge. We're funding their budget. So there are opportunities out there. And it is very easy, folks, for you to get lost in these organizations where they really take over your life. Like, I've had at least one student say that her marriage failed because her husband became a Mason. Yeah. There are lodges that absolutely, if you don't moderate yourself, you will just sacrifice everything for the lodge, and you can't do that. And lodges, that's not what we teach in Masonry. You're supposed to find that balance. The lodge is supposed to be a missing component. It fits a space that you have. It doesn't mean that it has to take away all these other things and the lodge replaces that. That's not the way these fraternities or sororities or philanthropical organizations are supposed to operate. Do Shriners wear the large plumed hat and use a sword at funerals like other Masons? No. If you're seeing that at a funeral, that is either Knights of Columbus, which are a men's Catholic organization, or if they are Masons, they are Knights Templar. So Masonic history is complicated, but at its core, there are three common bodies that are out there. The one thing we all have in common here in the United States is we have Blue Lodge Masonry. If you meet a Freemason, They're a Blue Lodge Mason. They receive degrees 1, 2, and 3. When we have these degrees, think of them like classes. Think of them like moral lessons. You learn something in every degree you go through. From there, we had an evolution of the art. The way Masonry was propagated is it was an oral tradition. It was memorized. The rituals that we have, the lessons that we teach, all this was stored in the head. So what we would have is we'd have lecturers go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to jurisdiction teaching these lessons. And over time, a lot of different lessons popped up. This is not any different than the Christian Bible. Over time, as Christianity developed from 0 AD to 400 AD, the population grew. They included other cultures, right? It went from something that was primarily Jewish in nature. Then they started including Greeks and Italians and all these other areas. You have these large distances with no real convenient way to communicate over long distances. And at some point, they had to sit down and say, okay, what is the core of what we are going to teach? This is why in Christianity, we have something called the apocryphal books. Not something they usually teach in Bible study. And what the apocryphal books are books that were used in early Christian or even, somewhat later Christian communities, that when they decided to compile the great library, Biblios, library, the Bible, they said these books don't need to be in the core teaching. This is what has to be there. Forget about mistranslations and crap like that. The Bible is a collection of other books and stories. And that's what Masonry did, is we started collecting these things. And we formed two general areas. York Rite Masonry, primarily based out of the United Kingdom, and then Scottish Rite Masonry, which was based off of a lot of these other lectures and then compiled. A lot of them came from the Caribbean islands, Scotland. I mean, just a lot of stuff. And what you see is in York Rite, you have like 3, 6, like 10 further degrees. And when you get to the top, you have the Knights Templar. With Scottish Rite, you have 32 lessons. 32 degrees. Way back in the day, if you wanted to be a Shriner, you either had to be a Knights Templar or you had to be a 32nd degree Mason. Then you could become a Shriner. And the shrines only existed since the late 1800s. It's a very new organization. And it was not even made by Masons, it was made by an actor and a doctor. Shrines got some cool history. So the Knights Templar and the Knights of Columbus are nearly identical in their appearance. They both wear black tuxes. They both wear plumed hats. The difference will be the Knights of Columbus have one type of badge on their hat, and the Knights Templar will have a cross. Knights of Columbus will wear little capes. Knights Templar typically do not wear capes. Their swords are very similar. Their belts are very similar. And even the chains on their belts, if they're using chains instead of the straps, are very similar. So if you're at a Catholic church, person that died is Catholic, 99% certain you're looking at Knights Columbus. If it's a Mason, 99% positive it's going to be Knights Templar. And I am a Templar. I'm not. I went through all of the York Rite Masonry stuff. I have not done Scottish Rite. I keep saying I'm going to do that, and I never do it. Chandra, I put in my application for the Oddfellows last week. Haven't heard anything back yet. So here's a cool thing about these organizations. Most of them have a background check requirement. And all of them have a voting requirement, to my knowledge. So when you put in an application for one of these fraternities, sororities, whatever you want to call them, that application has to go before a vote of the body itself. So if you have an Oddfellows Lodge that only meets the second Tuesday, and you put your application in, the second Friday of that month, they're not even going to vote on it for a month, because they only do business on the second Tuesday. And until it's voted upon, they might not even be able to go out and do interviews or investigations, whatever they want to call them. In the Masons, we do investigations. So if a person puts in a petition, it's got to go before the Masonic, it's got to go before the business meeting. We have to vote on it. We have to agree to go ahead and accept the application and appoint a committee to investigate. We send brothers out to talk to the individual. State of Florida, we are required to do a background check. We do a federal background check to make sure that you're not... so if you are a felon, you're ineligible for membership in a Masonic body, any of them. You're done. Like, if you're a felon, you're just done. So we take that aspect very seriously in the state of Florida. Most grand jurisdictions do as well. So once they have met with you, once the background check comes back, the report is presented, and then we vote to go ahead and extend, the initial level of membership. So it's not a quick process, especially if you have a lodge that only meets to do business like once a month. That's what could be tying things up. Angela, thank you for your response. I'm going to email you because I would like to talk more about this. I've been so conflicted about this and have a few more questions. Feel free. Best email for those sort of questions, folks, is askbigbadfinn@gmail.com. Lisa, if you're listening, I know you like to catch my podcast after. I did see your email. I'm sorry I haven't responded. I will respond, I promise. That's just me being too damn busy for my own good. So, apologies. All right, folks, anything else going on? Anything else you want to know about? In fact, you know what? I thought I have it here. Nah, I don't know what the hell I did with it. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had some of my Masonic stuff here, other than, like, my hat. In fact, if you find me on Facebook, I actually have a photo album on my Facebook profile that is pictures of all the Masonic aprons that I've collected over the years. I got some really badass Masonic stuff. And during commencements, I also wear my Masonic bling. I'll wear a collar with a past master's jewel and stuff like that, just because it looks cool. I don't know why, I just always love showing off stuff about the fraternity. Like, I'm very proud to be a Mason. I'm very proud to be a past master of my lodge. And anything I can do to show honor to the fraternity, I absolutely do. So you're almost never going to see me in academic regalia where I'm not wearing something Masonic. Darla asks, are current members who subsequently become felons terminated? Yes. Yes. So when you are a Mason, there are rules that you have to live by. And what generally happens is if you are accused of a felony, you will be gently reminded that felons are not permitted in Masonry, and the brother is given an option to either voluntarily relinquish their membership, or the lodge will vote to revoke their membership. And if a lodge refuses to do that, there's a reason why we have a grand jurisdiction. So in the state of Florida, there is the most worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Florida. That is the Florida governing body. View it as kind of like a state. And then under the Grand Lodge are all the lodges in the state of Florida. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, If we're not following the Masonic Lodge, the Masonic law, then the Grand Lodge becomes involved. And when the Grand Lodge becomes involved, you don't want the Grand Lodge to become involved. Grand Master can get involved and just say, he's not. Do what you need to do. And if you don't do that, Grand Master can literally shut your lodge down. Like, that is a thing. If you are not obeying the law, okay? If you're not obeying the law, the Grand Lodge can literally show up, take your charter for your lodge off the wall, walk out the door, and then you no longer exist. You're done. So when people choose to enter into these type of organizations and promise to live by those tenets, I'm not going to say it's a big deal, but it's a pretty big deal. Like, you shouldn't think it's arbitrary. And I'm not saying that, like, oh my God, you know, this cult is over here. No. It's not like that. It's, if we've told you that a condition of membership is you can't commit felonies, you should be going out of your way to make sure that you are not committing felonies. I mean, yeah, you know, in general, as a good citizen of your country, you should not be going out of your way to commit felonies. You know, look at the stuff when you have these funeral homes that are misappropriating bodies, right? At the beginning of the live stream, I know some of you probably weren't here, we're talking about this thing that happened at Harvard where the head of their morgue, the head of their willed body program, basically, was selling body parts and stuff. And because he was shipping it across state lines, it became a federal felony. If he was a Mason, he'd have one option: surrender your membership before you get convicted. Because the moment you are convicted, your lodge is going to have to revoke your membership. And if your lodge doesn't do that, I promise you the Grand Lodge of your jurisdiction is going to come down and pull your charter because you don't know how to apply Masonic law. Like, you can't. And the fun part is, if you are a Mason and you are a member of any other body that requires your Masonic membership, like the Shrine, you lose the Blue Lodge, you lose it all above. So if I was to commit a felony, right, if I was to be found guilty of a felony, I would lose my membership in every Masonic organization that I am a member of. I would lose it in my York Rite, I would lose the Shriners, I would lose the Royal Order of Scotland, I would lose my Blue Lodge, I would lose my Eastern Star. It all disappears, just like that. So I have a tendency to not want to commit felonies. You know, other than the fact that I try to be a very moral and ethical person, I really don't want to commit felonies. Do Masons participate or meet up for weddings or just funerals? So there is a Masonic funeral ritual. There is no Masonic wedding ritual. So Masons do not necessarily meet up for weddings in a Masonic way. Now, what I can tell you is different jurisdictions will do things differently. Nothing is saying that a Mason or a group of Masons cannot show up in their regalia at a wedding. Like, I've seen that. Different jurisdictions interpret their laws differently. In the state of Florida, if you are a member of a funeral team, there is a uniform that you are basically wearing. You're not allowed to wear any emblems of office other than what is prescribed. You're not allowed to wear fancy aprons. You wear exactly what the ritual calls for when it comes for a Masonic funeral. If you are simply present at a Masonic funeral and not part of the funeral team, and you want to show respect and honor to the deceased by wearing collar, cuffs, dress apron, etc., there is nothing in the state of Florida that says that you cannot do that. But the moment you want to step in and be part of the funeral team during that funeral, you got to take it all off and you have to dress accordingly to be part of the ritual team. So there are rules for that. It is also quite common if you're something like a Knights Templar that you can request them to be an honor guard for a wedding. So they'll show up in their chapeaus and the swords and they'll do an arch of swords so that the bride and groom can walk through. I've seen that a lot. I have literally seen that a lot. there's a lot of liberties out there. So just like funeral law, when you are in doubt as to what your grand jurisdiction allows or doesn't allow, ask. Ask. Sometimes it's a don't ask, don't tell sort of policy. No one really cares. Other times, there may be a flat out prescription that you cannot do something like that. And if you cannot do something like that, you simply don't do it. Don't poke the bear. Making the Grand Master unhappy in your jurisdiction is a surefire way to be unhappy yourself. All right, folks. For those of you on the Eastern Seaboard, it is 10:15. For us here in Central Time, it is 9:15. So I'd like to thank all of y'all for coming out tonight. Again, we'll be doing this again next month in the month of March. I'll post some times here probably next week to get a couple of days locked down for the next couple of months. Probably do something later in the month in April, just because American Board is meeting during that during the I think the second week of April. I think it's the second week, so I'll probably do a Friday with Finn. Probably week 3 or week 4, just so I can talk about the American Board Conference, stuff that went on, show off pictures, stuff like that. Otherwise, folks, y'all have a wonderful rest of your night. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Always love when you folks do it. Really humble that you spend the time to sit around and listen to my old fogey butt talk about stuff for an hour or two. Love y'all. Peace out.